Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today, in the first episode, our target is Monsters, Inc., produced by Pixar Animation Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, which was at the time known as Buena Vista Pictures Distribution. Monsters, Inc. released on November 2nd, 2001, becoming Pixar's fourth film after 1999's Toy Story 2 and 2003's Finding Nemo. The film would be Pixar's first movie not directed by John Lasseter, but instead Pete Docter, who would go on to direct Up, Inside Out, and Soul. The film was co-directed by Lee Unkrich and David Silverman. It was produced by Darla K. Anderson, and the screenplay was by Andrew Stanton and Daniel Gerson. It was composed by Randy Newman, who had composed all of Pixar's previous films, and would go on to compose many more. The cast includes John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Steve Buscemi, James Coburn, Mary Gibbs, Jennifer Tilly, and Bob Peterson. The film saw great success, earning nearly $580 million on a budget of $150 million. The film was nominated for 35 different awards, of which it won 10 of. The film was greatly received by audiences and critics alike, and it is still praised by many today, sparking a prequel movie, Monsters University, in 2013, and a sequel show, Monsters at Work. The film follows Sulley and his best friend Mike, two employees at Monsters Incorporated, a power company. In this world, energy is generated by scream power. To harness these screams, monsters like Sulley go through doors that lead them to the closets of human children that they then scare. Sulley and Mike are the number one collector of screams in their sector, and as such are often opposed by the second best, Randall. Eventually, Sulley and Mike become wrapped up in a conspiracy when Sulley accidentally lets a human child, that he later names Boo, into the monster world. They quickly realize that Randall plays a part in this mystery, and do their best to get Boo back through her door without him knowing. They eventually find out that the owner of the company, Mr. Waternoose, is the second half of the conspiracy. Desperate to save his company from going under, Mr. Waternoose teamed up with Randall to build machines that will suck the screams out of children like Boo. Sulley and Mike are able to defeat Mr. Waternoose and Randall, and they become the new owners of the company, switching to laugh power rather than scream power. The first thing I'd like to discuss about Monsters, Inc. is the world building. The fundamental idea and created world is one of, if not the most creative world I've ever seen. In many "what does the world of blank look like" movies, in this case Monsters, the world is very identical to our own world, the only difference being the inhabitants, whether it be animals, cars, robots, or fish. But that doesn't make sense. If we're supposed to believe that this world was built by the replacement for humans, then would we really expect it to look identical to our world and not better suited to the lives of these creatures? Monsters, Inc., however, thought of these things, and put in many big and small details that allow the world to feel like a world built by monsters and lived in by monsters. Let's start with the smaller details. Sulley's chair has a hole in the back so that he can sit in it with his tail. Meanwhile, Mike's chair is beanbag-like and better suits his spherical shape. The architecture, such as on doorways, clipboards, and even glasses, have monster-like emblems on them, looking like monster horns or teeth. Advertisements on billboards, magazines, and newspapers show things that a monster would want to buy to make them look scarier. Boo's costume that is used to hide her identity as a human is made up of objects that can be seen in the apartment. Some material is taken from Sulley's chair, and the lamp that makes the costume's eyes can be seen earlier in the film on Mike's desk. Furthermore, there are posters in the apartment that show jazz musicians, reflecting the excellent jazz music presented throughout the film. The monster designs are unique and variable throughout. Some have fur, some are slimy, some massive teeth or big horns. Some monsters are huge, some are small. Some got tails or wings, some look like crabs, bugs, plants, reptiles. These neat details show the level of care that went into the movie throughout every step of the process. But what about bigger, more important things? Details that help the story move forward in a natural progression. Well, one thing I love about this film is the way it delivers the exposition needed to understand how this world functions. This movie requires a little bit of background knowledge to fully understand the story. This movie has no one scene where it, in essence, sits you down and says, here's what you need to know. Instead, the film starts like any other movie, but subtly provides the details in 3 simple scenes: the opening, the commercial, and Mike and Sulley walking to work. The opening is a monster in training who practices his scaring in a simulation and is then given notes. This provides the basic concept of scaring and introduces the hidden villain, Mr. Waternoose. It is well hidden because it is wrapped in a joke of a monster being bad at his job, and the twist that the bedroom is really just a simulation. Next, the commercial Mike and Sulley watch gives additional context as to who exactly is collecting these scares like Sulley, and that monsters like Mike have different jobs, but are still important despite receiving less credit. This scene has well-hidden clues because it is wrapped in the joke of Mike being excited that he was in a commercial despite his brief appearance. This scene is also natural. It doesn't feel like a break from the story because it makes logical sense that Mike and Sulley would want to watch a commercial that they were in. Finally, the scene where Mike and Sulley walk to work serves as a wrap-up of necessary background knowledge. It tells you that there is an energy shortage and that this screen power provides energy not only for homes, but cars as well. It also gives nice characterization to Mike and Sulley and their friendship with each other, which I will go into further detail about later. The comedy is another aspect of this movie that I find well done. Comedy is a difficult subject to talk about as everyone has different tastes as to what is and is not funny. What might make one person laugh might make another roll their eyes. The element of time also influences this. What may have made you laugh as a child may not as an adult. Maybe a joke hits you hard the first time, but maybe is less funny the second time when you know where the joke goes. In the end, comedy is probably the hardest thing to make work for the most people. For me, and I hope others will agree, a funny joke must have one of these 3 things: clever writing, characterization, or twist. I don't think that all criteria must be met for the joke to land, but the more the better. Clever writing comes in the form of knowing where to place the joke, keeping setting in mind, and the describing and telling of the joke. Characterization is knowing who best to tell the joke. It makes sense to who they are as a person, or maybe revealing something about someone that might make sense in retrospect. A twist is the riskiest of these, and I think is better paired with clever writing or characterization, as you don't want to incorporate a twist just to get a laugh out of people. If it doesn't make sense, you risk confusing the audience rather than amusing them. However, a well-placed and logical twist can make up some of the funniest jokes there are, if done right. Monsters, Inc. masters all 3 elements to make the jokes consistently funny, even after I've seen the film probably hundreds of times. Take, for instance, the joke of Mike getting overly excited about his appearance in the commercial, despite his face being blocked out. The writing is clever as it is combined with the exposition, as I discussed previously. It has characterization, as Mike can be egotistical, and he logically makes the most sense to tell the joke, as he also has the job that gets less recognition. And the twist is that Mike is even more egotistical than originally thought, as just his brief appearance in a commercial is enough to give him a huge head about it. This train of thought works for many of the jokes in the film, and I encourage you to apply it to other jokes not only in this film, but others as well, and see if the rules I created fit. It's something I'd like to play with, and will probably modify as time goes on. The next topic to discuss is the relationship between Mike and Sulley, and how they compare and contrast from each other. What I love about Mike and Sulley is that they are very different from each other, and still manage to look out for one another. Mike is quite egotistical and sarcastic and enjoys living life, trying to spend time with his girlfriend Celia. Sulley is kind-hearted and deeply enjoys his job as a scarer, but doesn't have much outside that, but he doesn't really mind. These conflicting views on life continue after the introduction of Boo, and they have different ideas of what to do with her. Mike wants to get her back to the human world no matter what, so long as he and Sulley don't get found out. Sulley, on the other hand, wants to ensure that Boo will get back through her door, and safely too, having warmed up to her much quicker than Mike. Luckily, though, the film takes great care to ensure that Mike and Sulley still have a good friendship. During the first act of the film, Sulley shows his kindness to Mike when he gets the impossible dinner reservations for him and Celia, and when he offers to turn in his paperwork for him so that he can make it in time for that same reservation. Mike, during the fiasco with Boo, sticks by Sulley's side despite not agreeing with him, and it putting him in danger many times. The only time Mike and Sulley are seriously against each other is when Mike abandons him after he gets them banished, which feels fair and earned in my eyes, and even be that as it may, Mike ultimately comes back for him and saves his life. It is very clever how Mike and Sulley are constantly offering two unique perspectives on every situation, and yet still manage to have a great bond with each other, giving sarcastic jabs to each other like real friends would do. Next up, I'd like to give an analysis on the two villains of the film. First, Randall. What Randall does well as a villain is his rise to power. At first, he seems just like an average jerk one might encounter when working in a job with coworkers, but later he becomes the biggest clue they have to the mystery of Boo entering the monster world. In the end, they discover that he has built a machine that will not only make him more successful than Sulley, but render all scarers obsolete. His pettiness goes so far that it isn't enough to beat Sulley, but instead to put him and everyone else out of a job. This rise in power in the audience's mind makes him serve as a good and threatening obstacle to Mike, Sulley, and Boo. The final battle against Randall is probably my favorite scene in the whole film, at least spectacle-wise, and his defeat is very satisfying. As a bonus, Randall does a good job hiding Mr. Waternoose's twist, as the audience isn't expecting a Scooby-Doo-like moment where a previous character reveals themselves as a villain, because Randall has already filled in the slot of antagonist. Mr. Waternoose is the second villain of the film, and what's interesting about him is his introduction as a good guy. Mr. Waternoose seems a kind man who is trying to keep his company afloat. What makes his reveal so shocking is that it is a reminder to the audience of who he really is, the CEO of a major corporation. He was only so kind to Sulley because of his top-performing numbers. He even states in the beginning of the film that he'd be willing to do anything to keep the company from going bankrupt. And the real kicker is that Sulley even agrees with him, saying that he would too. Mr. Waternoose being willing to kidnap children and put them through Randall's scream extractor is the final push Sulley needs to make him realize the immoral things he did for the company, even if he didn't realize it at the time, and that is not the kind of person he wants to be. After finding out how much he cares for Boo, he has a new purpose in life now, and successfully tricks Mr. Waternoose, with the help of Mike, and sends him to jail. Mr. Waternoose similarly serves as a good threat to the protagonists, and serves as a necessary part of Sulley's character arc, while also remaining his own character and having his own motives. One final thing I'd like to point out is that Mr. Waternoose and Randall are reluctant allies. They only work together because they can give the other what they want. They are constantly at odds with each other and hold secrets from one another. There's not really a point beyond that. It's just an interesting dynamic that I wanted to praise, as it's something I find quite unique and enjoyable, as well as serving as a contrast to Mike and Sulley, who are also quite disagreeable, yet get along great. Here is another small detail that does wonders for the flow of the plot in Monsters, Inc. It is a very simple and often seen technique in movies, and that is a setup and a payoff. Monsters, Inc. has many setups that later down the line get paid off in a satisfying way. The best example I can think of this is with the character of George Sanderson. George is a monster who early in the film, accidentally brings a sock with him from the human world, which results in everyone freaking out, and a group called the CDA must remove the sock, destroy it, and shave off George's fur. This becomes a running gag throughout the movie, where George will come into contact with a human object and be tortured by the CDA. However, this setup of a human sock resulting in a tackling by the CDA comes back in the end of the film, when Mike must distract them so that Sulley can get Mr. Waternoose alone. To do this, Mike throws a sock on a CDA member, who immediately gets tackled by the other members, giving Mike an opportunity to run out of the room and have them chase him. It is a simple yet effective technique used many times in the film to progress the plot, tell a joke, or give a bit of characterization. Another example being the accountant Roz saying that she is always watching Mike in the beginning of the film, and then repeating that again at the end, when she reveals that she was working undercover for the CDA, and that she really was watching them the whole time, trying to uncover Mr. Waternoose's plot. A final brief note I'd like to add as another compliment towards the film, and my first criticism of it, is its ending. First, the complaint. After Randall and Mr. Waternoose are defeated, Sulley must say goodbye to Boo. It is a very sad and touching scene. However, in the final scene of the film, Mike reveals to Sulley that he had gone through all the shredded doors to rebuild Boo's door so that Sulley could see her again. Sulley opens the door to see Boo, and his face lights up and the movie ends. Now, I don't hate this scene. I think it is nice that Sulley gets to continue seeing Boo, and that the new purpose he found in his life is still there. However, I can't help but think that it perhaps sours the sad scene of Sulley saying goodbye to Boo. I get that Sulley got the satisfaction of being like a father figure to Boo, and so maybe this was the best way to show that, but I don't know. Again, I don't hate this scene, it's just the only one I can find anything remotely negative to talk about, and it gets me thinking about alternative ways this could have been done. Finally, the compliment I have for the film's ending is what it does with Mike and Sulley's friendship. After Mr. Waternoose goes to jail, Mike and Sulley take over the company and switch from scream power to the much friendlier and effective laugh power. This new way of getting energy turns the scarers into jokesters, and Mike, being the funnier one, assumes Sulley's position, and Sulley takes his. I like the fact that this gives Mike a real chance to be in the spotlight, and Sulley isn't jealous of him, just like Mike wasn't for him, because they are a team, and a victory for one of them is a victory for both of them. Overall, I give Monsters Incorporated a 10 out of 10 for being a very fun and clever film. I find the biggest highlights of the film to be its creative world, fun characters, and interesting plot. Any low points are extremely rare and immemorable that they are barely worth mentioning at all. I highly recommend this film to anyone who has not seen it, or is due for a rewatching of it, and would definitely put it up as not only one of my favorite Pixar films, but all films in general. Well, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.